The Wickinisco Creek is a 43-mile-long major tributary to the Susquehanna River. Beginning near Joliet and entering the Susquehanna at Millersburg, this stream winds across the heart of the Likens Valley. Wickinisco, a word today changed from the local Delaware description of swampy, muddy camp, is signified throughout much of our watershed. The valley and the land along the creek has made a very large impact on our local history. The Wickinisco is a popular local stream for its scenic, gently flowing waters, which climax in many short, great, Class II rapids popular with kayakers and canoers. The creek also offers some of the best trout and smallmouth bass angling in Dauphin County. Wickinisco Creek arises at about 1,100 feet elevation, just below the village of Joliet in western Schuylkill County. The first crystal clear, gravelly spring flows out of the grassy, small-treed, new-growth forest. Clear cutting and logging have had negative impact by erosion and siltation of this tiny brook. Shortly after its commencement, Roush Creek Off-Road Park surrounds and enters the stream. Huge four-wheel drive vehicles navigate mudholes, uneven rocks, monster boulders, and rock fields. This is about a mile south of 209, halfway between Joliet and Muir. The highlight, a geological phenomenon, is a boulder strip between 50 to 100 yards wide, which stretches about a mile long. A small stream can be heard trickling deep beneath the unique rocks, which are covered in lichens but void of tree life. The boulders are human to car-sized, and this strip can be seen on Google Earth. The creek sinks in and out of a very boulder-filled bed after escaping this crazy jeep course. An abandoned colliery just up the hill from this point above 209 is piped from the shaft under the road and onto the side of the mountain. The large slug of orange, iron-laden acid mine drainage cascades down the side of Big Lick Mountain and adds a large flow of cloudy, polluted waters to the creek. This tributary has many four-wheeler trails and even an access road that it flows across, but no efforts seem to have been taken here to fix the problem. Below, many gravelly springs continue to feed the creek, which flows over cobble stained with mud and iron sulfide deposits. The channel is heavily braided, and its flow can be very hard to follow at times. The forest begins to thicken, and rhododendron, pine trees, and mountain laurel become the dominant species. The creek also changes from an oozing puddle to a healthy rocky stream. A stone access road comes south across the stream and up the other side of the mountain. Many clear cuts and hunting areas dot the landscape, which is otherwise quite rugged and scenic. The creek cuts many deep, large pools now, which are crystal clear, cobbly, and have a tint of cyan. Many very large springs arise from the mountainside, entering a few miles above Muir. One in particular especially took my attention. A kiddie pool-sized sandy pool with a wooden dam flowed heavily and crystal clear right out of the mountain south of the creek, which is Stony Mountain. Very large, violently bubbling springs push the sand into interesting shapes, and the pure, cold, clear water gives life to stonewort, watercress, elodea, and various other lush green water plants. This is much more typical of a Cumberland Valley limestoner, not an impaired coal country stream. Regardless, this wilderness trek proved absolutely beautiful, and I was a bit more than impressed at the headwaters of what now was a 5 to 10 foot wide creek. Many other similar sandy, weedy springs entered. Bogs of thick moss complemented a wide, lush stream, thick with mountain laurel and rhododendron. It was truly amazing to have such a boost to the trip, with the colorful, pebbly springs quickly enlarging this pristine gem. The creek hurries through a half-mile gorge below the springs with some loud, gushing rapids. Shortly below, a long, slow, wide, watergrass-filled pool wound around the bend into an opening valley, and a road and several houses on East Wickinisco Street in Muir took away from the center serenity. Next, another eyesore appears, a large, orange, metallic-smelling tributary that flows south into the Wiconisco. The slimy, rocked flow doubles the volume, but its dissolved solids cloud the clear waters as it intersects directly along the Wiconisco. This is the Porter Tower Tunnel Discharge, the site of the 1977 disaster. The area near the tunnel was heavily bootlegged in 18 and 1900s, but was bought by Cucker Coal. In 1977, the mine flooded, killing 9 people, injuring 3, and leaving 1 trapped for 5 days. This man was eventually rescued and survived. Many others escaped unharmed. The tunnel and the mine were closed off and have now become a treatment facility to this severely impaired tributary. Treatment begins with water piped from the tunnel into a runway, which gets a heavy limestone dosage from a tower. The water is churned to help dissolve the calcium carbonate in the limestone, raising the pH and lowering the dissolved solids of the water from the iron and aluminum. The water enters the first settling pond, which has an orange bottom, indicating good settling of the metals. The water flows into a second pond to settle again, and by the third pond, which is the last, biological life, which is mostly cattails, help to further the treatment of the water, which then flows into a channel at a power line crossing just east of Muir. One can see great views of Pumpkin Hill, a large knob off the side of Stony Mountain to the south from here. The stream, now clear, flows across cobble that is still stained from prior to treatment. Porter Run, as I call it, now cascades over a set of rapids in a steep, small, short gorge, climaxing with a 10-foot vertical waterfall. The soils on the side of the waterfall are stained orange, as is the trash and debris in the stream. After crossing a bridge on a stone road off East Wiconisco Street, the tributary mixes with the Wiconisco through a channelized stony waterway through hemlock and mountain laurel forests. The stream begins to wind again as the gradient drops, and it enters silty bottomlands. The channel often becomes braided again. The water has a pasty green tint. The creek exits the forest and enters a mix of bottomlands with alders and paper birches and swampy grasslands near Muir and Orwin at the 325, which is Clarks Valley Road, bridge. The swamp has huge, dense grasses that are dry and brown, that form huge clumps and mats the sizes of cars. This area resembles a wasteland hayfield in Kansas or South Dakota. The meandering stream is covered with thick waving mats of coarse green watergrass, and now has a deep, muddy bank channel. After another dip into the forest land, many gravelly streams add to the flow, and the creek enters another swampy marsh below Greenwood Street in Tower City. Cattails, sedges, and tannish, reedy grasses grow nearly 20 feet tall in this swamp, which is about a mile long. This area is nearly impossible to walk through, not only from the dense reeds, but also the thick, soupy mud. This area resembles an Iowa duck hunting creek, although we saw no ducks here. The swamp helps to capture pollution and sediment. An access road and bridge cross, and a dirt road leads to the Wissahickon Springwater Tower. Hope they aren't getting the spring water out of this creek. Several black and orange tributaries enter at Tower City. A grass road parallels the creek, and manhole covers become an eyesore every 50 feet or so. The stream has been through so much, and the town puts a sewer directly alongside of this recovering stream. The creek again enters some less aesthetic forest as it slowly winds through now cold dirt banks. Surprisingly, the water runs clear and is very gravelly and decent looking. At the 209 bridge at the Williams Valley High School, the creek has attained navigable status, and this is where I began the journey by kayak. Many grassy seeps ooze through the culverts below the road, and the creek is now 10 to 20 feet wide, with cobbly riffles and mostly fast, deep runs. Forests again dominate the landscape, and the creek is a decent kayak run. There were surprisingly few strainers, which are fallen trees and log jams, and the scenery was fairly good. At Railroad Street in Williamstown, which is actually the recommended put-in, a 35-foot wide, 6-foot deep pool marks the entrance back into development. The Wiconisco flows by an old railroad trestle, a sewage treatment plant, and a line of benches in the grass with a couple 8-inch ledge drops. This stretch is nothing short of great. The stream was narrow, yet fast, and deep, never less than 2 feet. Ribbon was free of strainers and gravelly, clear, winding bed. A large, pristine tributary, which is actually the source of the Williamstown reservoirs, creates an interesting, thick sandbar. Above Dayton, strainers become more frequent, with massive, annoying log jams that required many carries. Your boat quickly gets filled with mud, coal dirt, and debris. Just below the Dayton Food Mart, the remnants of an old dam make a fun 2-foot rapid drop into a dark blue, 12-foot deep whirlpool larger than a classroom. Below Dayton, an acid mine drainage tributary enters at a footbridge. Below, the creek makes long bends, has occasional strainers, and is quite ugly with trash, cloudy water, and coal dirt banks. The trees are scraggly and the landscape is rough. By Mockamer Avenue, below Wickanisco, the creek becomes absolutely horrendous. A large, ugly, creepy coal plant with huge calm piles makes black dust, black banks, black ground, and black water. The area resembles Halloween, looking hazy and devoid of life. The creek is flat, winding, and featureless. After what seems like forever, you see the Likens Tigers Field and the old shirt factory at the Arch Street Bridge. The stream gains some riffles, narrows, and flows through backyards and Likens. Just above the Market Street Bridge, a very obvious change occurs. Bear Creek. Polluted heavily from abandoned tunnels at the foot of Bear Gap, this solid orange cobbly riffle enters, making an extremely drastic change to the already nasty waters of the Wickanisco. The water takes on a pasty greenish yellow tint and has a very unique scent. The rocks on the right, which is north, from Bear Creek effluents are solid orange, and the waters actually stain my hand orange. A long lake-like hole gives you a tour of the backyards of Likens, and then the gradient again picks up. The rocky stream begins to drop over heavy riffles and small rapid drops as it bends around the trashy bank with huge calm piles and old trailers. Passing again under Route 209, the Rattling Creek enters from the left, helping to dilute the cloudy water with its clear mountain flow. I could do a whole nother project on this creek. The now large Wickanisco exits Likens at the Sucker Hole, where large piles of rocks in the now channelized Rattling Creek display flood damage and man's ugly attempt to fix it. Riffles and Class 2 rapids continue below Likens, behind Meadowbrook, which is now R&R Coal, as lush hemlock stands take over. This section has some very dangerous strainers and rapids that are not passable due to these log jams. Be careful and watch out for the braided section ahead. It's easier to run on the left-hand side, which is now larger due to the flood, but you'll still have to carry several times. The creek rejoins near the last houses of Big Run, and there are several great series of rapids with large, bouncy waves. A few cables cross the creek for the ignorant Black Creek Hunting Club, who own several hundred acres on Berry Mountain on both sides of the creek. This is all posted heavily, but it is a navigable, therefore public waterway. There is now an interesting quarter-mile pool with a constant width and depth below one of the largest sets of rapids. Below there are many strainers, braids in the creek, and log jams. Most of this does require a carry, so be conscious of the club. Below the Calvary Independent Church in Big Run, the rapids mellow and the creek becomes a long pool and riffle-type water. The remnants of an old bridge mark the last sets of rapids. The creek braids once more below this, and fields for the club can be seen on the right bank. Strainers become less common, and the water quality becomes quite good. A large sandy tributary enters, which is Canoe Gap Run, which supplies some water to Elizabethville, as well as Littleton. Below, another large stream enters, which is actually the source of the Littleton Well. After crossing the Oakdale Station Bridge, the creek nearly flattens and makes wide, deep bends toward the Littleton Campground. Flowing due north, the Wickanisco is now a mature creek, changing little to its mouth at the river. The upper, which is actually the majority, 27 miles of the creek covered in this project, seem to have changed from nearly pristine to bombed out by its polluted tributaries. This recovering waterway deserves your respect for its historical, recreational, and scenic significance to the Likens Valley.